we'll uncover the intricacies of video surveillance, discuss and the ethical implications, and explore the future as seen through the eyes of DTiQ's visionaries. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our inaugural episode of iQTalk. I'm your host for today, Gabrielle, and right now we have the pleasure of speaking with two experts in the industry from DTiQ, Marc Litz, CEO, and John Donnelly, CRO. And together, we'll uncover the intricacies of video surveillance, discuss and the ethical implications, and explore the future as seen through the eyes of DTiQ's visionaries. So sit back, tune in, and let's talk a little IQ. So to start us off, Marc and John, welcome first and foremost. Just give us a brief bio, your name and title, a little bit about what brought you to the industry, just to give our audience a little bit more background. Let's go ahead and start with you, John.
Sure. Yes. John Donnelly, CRO, as you said. Welcome to everybody for the podcast. We're really excited about iQTalk, and our responsibilities are all go-to-market operations, including sales, marketing, customer success, as well as partnerships. I've been on board now a little over a year, but a lot of experience in the QSR retail and convenience store spaces globally. So really excited about launching the podcast. Fantastic.
And Marc.
Great. Thanks, Gabrielle. Thanks, John. Yeah, Marc Litz here. I'm the CEO of DTiQ. Equally as excited for this kickoff of the podcast. I've been with DTiQ for a little less than 6 years. For the first 4.5 years, I was the global CFO, and I've been the global CEO for the last year and a half. As you can probably guess, my background's mostly in finance. Spent most of my career prior to DTiQ working for larger multinational, publicly traded tech companies up here in the Boston area. Including taking a company private prior to coming to DTiQ.
So like we said, this is episode 1, very exciting stuff. What can listeners expect from the DTiQ podcast in terms of content, topics that may be coming up, maybe potential guests? What's the vision for this podcast? What can we look out for?
Sure. Yeah. The vision for the podcast really is ultimately about providing industry-leading thought leadership to our customers and prospects, and certainly our investors out there in the market. DTiQ has been in business now for over 25 years, so tons of experience in the market, lots of experience with some of the largest brands in the world. And so the idea is to bring together industry luminaries and certainly many of our largest brand customers to help provide some of the insights and really kind of some of the actionable insights they've been able to find with the platform, and really provide a vehicle for other folks out there thinking about technology like DTiQ as an option. So we're really just excited to share a lot of great successes and hopefully kind of start to create a conversation around where this industry is headed.
Yeah, and this first episode is going to be a perfect prime example of that, because we're talking video surveillance as well as loss prevention. So I wanted to ask both of y'all, Marc and John, just what aspects of video surveillance and loss prevention inspire you the most in terms of what's going on in the industry? What's got you onto this podcast to talk about this topic?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the areas of surveillance and loss prevention are pretty broad. And frankly, when people hear the word surveillance, there's a negative connotation. Usually people think Big Brother, people think bad actors. The reality is that, I think what we want to highlight is that the combination of surveillance and how it's evolved over the years to what it is today, along with ingesting data from other systems that our customers use, it goes beyond just what people think of as, kind of that negative connotation of surveillance. It's using video and data to help you run a business and an operation at scale, and help you make better business decisions. So I think one of the things just around awareness for me is kind of getting that message out there that surveillance isn't a bad thing. Like, you can use it combined with other sources of data to make improvements and to actually reward good behavior as well.
That's right. The thing I'd add to that as well is I think in a lot of cases, our customers, I think if they feel like if they can see something, they can do something about it. And ultimately, obviously, the video technology that we provide is not our super strength. Our strength is the software platform, the subscription that we sell to people. And so when people bring our platform into their organization, they're able to see a lot of things they couldn't see before. Think about ways to, as Marc said, improve their business from an ROI perspective, on all kinds of areas, certainly around loss prevention, certainly around food security, things like that. So a lot of things that we do enable brands to be more successful, enable higher levels of brand loyalty. So lots of areas for business to improve upon with one platform with data all feeding into that to give them a structure and an architecture that integrates with other corporate business systems as well. Based on the kind of the front of the house, so to speak. So it's really kind of exciting, and industry continues to evolve, especially post-COVID.
Absolutely. And John, you've had extensive experience, especially with convenience stores. So how has that kind of viewpoint shaped surveillance's role in loss prevention from your perspective?
Sure. Well, I think with convenience stores, obviously there's outside the store and there's inside the store in terms of what people worry about. Whether it's a store that has, a fueling station as well as, a grocery store or a coffee shop. But many of our brands sit within a lot of the largest convenience store locations. So a good example is EG Group here in the United States and certainly in Europe, where they have multiple brands like Burger King, Subway, Kentucky Fried Chicken, you name it, the usual QSR brands you hear out there are all located within their convenience store locations, as well as typically some kind of a retail operation as well, along with fuel and other services. So these are multi-location areas where there's lots of things being done, lots of point of sale systems being integrated. And so if you have a platform that does integrate with those systems like we do, along with the video technology, it's really interesting because we can provide that way for customers to look at actionable insights and make changes to the business that are productive. So it's pretty exciting, and convenience store space is one we've got many customers now, and we continue to grow into that space here in 2024.
Yeah, John, you touched on a really important point there. I mean, when we think about the key markets and the verticals that we serve at DTiQ, it's really quick serve. It is specialty retail, what we call kind of middle of the mall retail, and convenience store. And as John was mentioning, what you're seeing in the evolution of convenience stores in particular is that they have elements of all three of those verticals under one roof now. So it's something that we can address pretty readily.
And Marc, as you mentioned, you're fast approaching 6 years with DTiQ. So over the years, I'm sure you've seen a natural evolution. But what have been some of the significant changes you've seen specifically when it comes to customer engagement?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about the evolution of the space over the last 6 years, I mean, you can think of it along a couple of different lines. Roughly speaking, hardware, software, and use cases. When I think about the hardware, I mean, obviously, it's reliant on cameras and servers, and those have leapfrogged over the past 6 years. There was a pretty big jump from analog to IP about 5 or 6 years ago, right when I joined the business. That's on the hardware side. On the software side, you see a lot of AI, you see a lot of computer vision, you see a lot of businesses using AI to develop and train engines on what to look for within certain retail environments, quick serve environments, and recognizing those immediately based on the data set that it's been trained on. And then thirdly, as far as use cases go, I think the biggest thing that I'm particularly excited about is the evolution of using surveillance primarily as a loss prevention tool. And what we've seen is buyers looking at it more from a revenue generating perspective. So I think in some ways, surveillance will always be grounded in the typical use cases of loss prevention, theft detection and theft prevention. However, what we've been seeing, especially post-COVID, with the I shouldn't even say the evolution of drive-through. Drive-through has always been here. It's just a lot of the brands are doubling down on drive-through now. They're looking at how to get more throughput, whether it's inside the store or whether it's at the drive-through. So what you see now is a lot of the brands and operators focused not just on the loss prevention side, but focused on how they can deploy technology, and whether that's surveillance combined with data, combined with things like using those for things like speed of service analyses. That's where kind of the market's heading from a use case perspective. So that's really interesting.
And you said it yourself. I mean, you say the word surveillance, and it tends to be on more of the negative connotation side. So in your words, can you explain what video surveillance is? I mean, discuss that kind of evolution in of itself, and just how we can help frame this in a way to businesses that this is something that's beneficial to them. This is a positive.
Yeah, I mean, so along those lines, I always say to people that don't really know the industry that well is when they say, "What do you do, Mark? What industry are you in?" And then you talk about surveillance, and then you kind of have to quickly say, "Well, this isn't." And I I'm probably aging myself a little bit, but this isn't 1998 CSI. When you're watching that show and someone an event has taken place and they say, "Okay, go in, get the tape, rewind, and figure out what happened." Like, no, that's not what we do. I think the way to think about it is we've got a phrase here internally that we use fairly often, which is, if you can't see it, you can't measure it. So, from our perspective, the ability to use video and to use computer vision use cases in AI to measure and speed of service is the classic example here. It's just easy for everyone to understand, right? So, yeah, you can look at your point of sale data and say, I got so many customers during the lunch hour on Monday, and if you look at that data, it tells you what happened. Now, if you own 50 stores and store number 37 is lagging behind, it's outside of your comfort zone for speed of service, the POS data isn't going to tell you why. Using cameras, using surveillance, using technology is going to help you not only just measure it, but tell you why store number 37 was lagging behind and help you as an operator, as our customer, the operator of the business, make a decision about how to better allocate your resources in order to address that in my example, store number 37.
That's right. Well, the other thing I was going to say about that too is as you think about the industry and how it's kind of trending, we looked at last year's results in terms of 2023 for the company. And I think we put forth almost 1 billion sales transactions on the platform and over $12 or $13 billion worth of money through the platform overall. And as Marc is saying, I think that the customers out there are seeing a focus on revenue generating activities. And so when it comes to drive-through, things like that, we bought a company over a year ago called Summit from Australia that has tremendous technology around what Marc was referring to, around measuring speed of service and how fast people can get their food and get loyalty points, et cetera, back to their apps that they use for drive-through. And we're seeing great motion there across many of our largest brands as they look to really upgrade their drive-through infrastructure, because a lot of it's been out there for a long time. It's been older. They're looking for ways to bring that drive-through, the results of what drive-through does for them from a revenue perspective, back into their business analytics across the rest of the brand. So think about Burger King or McDonald's or some of these larger brands, Inspire brands, including Dunkin' and things like that. Those types of customers are looking for ways to leverage a platform across multiple areas of their business where we're just seeing great, tremendous growth. And our technology is well suited for things both inside the store as well as outside the store now with our drive-through capabilities. Okay, we've got a great customer in Europe, one of our largest customers, RBI, which includes a lot of the Burger King restaurants. And they're looking at their existing drive-through infrastructure and figuring out ways to improve that. And the reason for that is because a lot of the district managers have very specific use cases where they want to measure store productivity, food quality, speed of service, as Marc mentioned earlier, and ways to make the drive-through experience that much faster. Because as everybody knows, if you're driving down the road one day, you're going to go to the drive-through where there's nobody in line or things are moving quickly. You're not going to get into a line and wait because people, are moving faster these days, right? So, and drive-through is a primary way for people to not get out of their car, stay in a phone call, stay in a Zoom call, what have you, and keep moving with their lunch or breakfast, whatever they're getting. So, but RBI's use case is to really kind of eliminate some of the things that happen in drive-through around, where certain employees are not following the rules or following the guidelines that the brand set forth. And so they're looking for ways to, find things that are not really up to par and improve upon them and make that experience from a consumer perspective that much better. And our technology is a great fit for that. So they can really measure, as Marc was saying earlier, they can measure what's going well, what's not going well, and how they can improve upon it, and use it for ways to train employees that are maybe new to the business or coming into a store that they've not been into before. But you can use that to train them on better ways to approach a problem.
Yeah, I mean it's really interesting, this question, because we could probably dedicate a whole separate podcast the use cases for folks that are operating in the QSR, retail and convenience store environments. And the more that we talk to our customers, the more powerful it becomes. I mean, we broadly think of our value prop along kind of three different lines. And we've talked a little bit about two of those, which is really, kind of the ground floor, if you will, foot in the door, loss prevention use cases, insurance, theft, those sorts of things. And then at the top of the chain is what we talked about with revenue generating opportunities, whether it's drive-through speed of service, whether it's order accuracy. And then kind of in the middle is what we call operating efficiencies that has a whole subset of use cases around inventory shrink, food spoilage if you're a restaurant owner. So really what amazes me about this is the combination of how our customers are using the data and the surveillance and the camera system to address just like an exploding number of use cases. I think the real power here is that when you have access to the why, and you can marry the question of why did it happen up with the actual data and pinpoint, in more or less real time what's going on in your operation. There's just so many different ways that you can use that it's probably worth a whole different podcast, because we hear about new ways that our customers are using our technology to address their problems, and every operator's problems are different.
One thing I was going to add too, we just recently had a go-to-market meeting up here in Boston, and we had one of our larger customers, Five Guys, talk about some of their use cases. And this is a preview for a future podcast down the road, maybe episode 3 or 4 here. But some of the success that they're having around, really, again, their big focus has been on employee training and making sure that things are being done right in various stores, and setting up really, really interesting and fun bonus programs amongst different stores, things like that. So, and as Marc mentioned earlier, if you can't see what's happening, it's really hard to measure it. So the idea is that they can measure this more effectively. They're also adding drive-through capability as well. So, the whole idea really of this podcast going forward is to really bring those types of customers in to talk to the industry about the success that they're having kind of before they had DTiQ, and now certainly after, and how they've evolved their businesses to be more efficient around what they look at and how they take action.
And that brings me to the next question, which is trends. I mean, what are some of the major trends that you've been seeing or that listeners should be looking out for in terms of surveillance technology that's going on right now?
Yeah, I mean, we've spent a lot of time, I think rightfully so, on revenue generating, kind of the upstream capabilities of surveillance beyond just loss prevention, and it's true. And similarly on drive-through. I mean, drive-through, if you've seen any of the new store concepts out there, the QSR brands, I mean, post-COVID, they have really put all of their, shouldn't say eggs in one basket, but they have doubled down on investing in technology outside the store. And I think COVID really sort of accelerated the inevitable. Drive-through has always been an important component of any operator's revenue volume. However, it's spiked pretty noticeably, obviously, during COVID, but it didn't really return back to pre-COVID levels, meaning that consumers want the convenience of driving through and even pickup stations, like walk-up stations. You've got what we call multi-purpose, multi-lane drive-throughs. So, the new store concepts will have a dedicated lane for Uber Eats. They'll have a dedicated lane for order ahead. They're really doubling down on drive-through. And as I was saying, if you've seen some of the new store designs in restaurants, particularly Burger King, Taco Bell, I think also to an extent Chick-fil-A, they've got some new concepts out there that are basically, much less of a footprint around the dining room, and really focused on the pickup and drive-through outside the store. So, I mean, that's really been the biggest trend in the industry from my perspective, is the technology deployment outside the store and really focusing less on the dining room experience if you're a quick serve operator.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add to that, I think, is that we've seen this too with some of our largest Burger King customers in Europe as well, Well, they want to take the information that they're gathering within DTiQ's platform and make that available across the rest of the business in terms of other, BI platforms and things like other business intelligence platforms where they want to provide more real-time data to how things are happening, in the field, so to speak, in a real-time way, right? To really say, okay, how are these 10 stores doing in this northern region of Spain versus these 25 stores over, in Scotland, depending on where they might be. So they're trying to, again, set up really interesting, cool employee bonus programs, as I mentioned earlier, that are based on how well stores are performing against some of the objectives they set up there from a KPI perspective. So our platform is able to feed that activity, which makes the brand that much happier about the decision to invest in DTiQ and truly see some really pretty cool ROI around how they can leverage that data real time and really kind of, act upon things faster.
Yeah, exactly, John. And I think you touched on an important point there, which is really using surveillance to reward good behavior and bonus your employees by driving better results versus using surveillance just to catch nefarious behavior or crimes.
And all jokes aside, we do see that on our platform. We see lots of interesting character things happening across our brands all the time, every day, certainly convenience, et cetera. And so I think ironically, as we've been talking about, the trends are more towards revenue generating operations, but a lot of our customers continue to rely on this technology for some of the things we talked about as well to watch out for some of that stuff that goes on just in life in general. So we'll always have that as kind of part of our platform. But in the end, the evolution certainly is more towards those kind of more positive side of how you survey things. And again, if you can see it, you can act upon it, kind of thing, and really providing that actionable level of insights that they couldn't get before.
And this is a natural segue into the ethics of it. So what are some of the ethical implications of using video surveillance technology? I mean, what are some of the foremost ones that industry professionals should be aware of? It's what they should be starting with.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as you mentioned, Gabrielle, I think that has been a hot button topic for a long time now, and it continues to evolve. And the issue there is it's jurisdictional. Obviously, you have GDPR in Europe that you need to deal with. You have local laws and regulations, depending on the state here in the U.S. So really, it's all about whether you're capturing personally identifiable data. And if you are, making sure that there's a disclosure about that and that you're on the right side of the law in whatever jurisdiction you're doing business in. So, from our perspective, we're not capturing that level of data. I mean, we can tell sort of the general characteristics of an individual in one of our customer sites, but we don't then tie that back to their credit card or to the ping on their cell phone or anything like that to actually identify them. But that's clearly the riskiest area and it's complex. It's complex because you need to make sure that you're compliant with laws and regulations, which, as I mentioned, are varied and evolving. So, what we try to do is just make sure that we understand whenever we release a new product or go into a new market that we're very thoughtful about how we approach that from a product perspective and making sure that we've got the right coverage from a legal perspective to make sure that we are not running afoul, because it can be easy to do that in today's day and age. It's just privacy is so important to individuals, rightfully so. And there's a lot of jurisdictions where, rightfully so as well, the laws are individual friendly, not necessarily company friendly or surveillance friendly.
I was going to say, one of the things I was going to mention that I don't think you've gotten to yet is, when people think about DTiQ, we have obviously our software platform. We provide the hardware and cameras, obviously, to provide input into our platform itself. And we also have a really tremendous, human element as well from a consulting and services perspective that we also provide for our customers. So the idea is you get a platform, you can actually get, tons of help from an auditing perspective on a monthly basis, which is really exciting. And the other interesting thing is that a lot of our customer success individuals we have on our team that customers can leverage have previous, QSR and convenience store experience as well. So they've got a lot of great domain expertise. So we really feel like we provide kind of a full-blown solution for customers that they're not used to getting from typical vendors because of our 25 years of experience, because of our tremendous, brand depth of experience. we're able to provide a really nice platform and a way for people to get advice and counsel on how best to use the platform and really how best to leverage the technology overall, which I think is pretty unique to our overall kind of value proposition. A lot of other vendors just don't seem to have. And again, we've been around for a long time, and we built that expertise up.
And I think the final thought just around the ethics of it. I mean, again, this is a huge topic these days. But look, if you're in the industry and you are capturing data, whether it's on paper, whether it's electronically, or whether it's through computer vision, surveillance, whatever. I think the most important part from my perspective, from an ethical standpoint, is okay, if you're allowed to do that and you're doing it, that's okay, obviously, under the guise of the law, but you got to be transparent with people who potentially walk into, your store, or if you're a surveillance provider, your customer store. So I think, just transparency to the end user is the most important thing, even if you're allowed to be, doing certain things with the data or with the images.
Well, that takes us, I would like to elaborate on just DTiQ's overall vision and direction as we're coming to the future here. But also, Marc, specifically the product development side, just how continuously DTiQ plans to align its practices with ethical standards. So we have that in place. But just, DTiQ's overall vision and direction, especially regarding new customer needs and future offerings. I mean, these trends that we've been talking about, it's a loaded question, so we can start on the ethical standards practice, but I would love to hear from both of y'all on that.
Yeah, of course. So look, from an ethics standpoint, just going back earlier to what I said, it's whenever we're entering a new market or releasing a new product, one of the foundational things that we need to do is make sure that we understand the laws and regulations, either on the product or the market that we're entering. So that's always going to be part of your product strategy these days in this day and age. Just in general, I think we touched on some of the key trends. And our strategy is to continue to serve the markets in which we serve, which is what we've been talking about here. It's quick serve restaurants, it's fast casual, it's retail, it is convenience store. Really, there's literally hundreds of thousands of restaurants out there, if not millions, if you think of a global market, where we have an ability to come in, deploy our technology, and to help our future customers run a better business. So I think we'll continue to sort of penetrate the markets that we've served so well, and it's our core competency. We've been doing this in these markets for 20 to 25 years. So we'll continue to do that. And we'll continue to listen to our customers. I mean, as the world evolves, as their consumers' needs and tastes evolve, that's going to breed new use cases for us to ingest from our customers and to figure out if we can build a solution or a feature set that can address the new use cases that come down the pipe over the coming years. And really, I mean, other markets, we think of anything that has similar characteristics to that quick serve kind of specialty retail convenience store ecosystem, where you have a cash register, where you have relatively high volume of foot traffic, if you will, where you might have a drive-through, and where you just have a relatively thin margin business who, these operators, it's no secret that the restaurant industry is tough to survive in. So if you can deploy technology to your advantage and help you run a better business and give you insights that you didn't have before, that's where we come in and play well.
Well, how can the industry reconcile the need for security with the privacy rights of individuals? This is related to our ethical conversation here. I mean, are there any best practices that you can recommend for businesses moving forward? And just finally, how significant is transparency and accountability in the use of video surveillance technology? Just what kind of measures can organizations take to uphold these types of values moving forward in the future?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, it comes back down to the transparency factor. Like, look, if you're allowed to do it, you should just be honest with your consumers about how you're capturing data and why you're capturing data. So to me, that's sort of the most important thing. And then, like I said, clearly, if you're releasing new products or if you're going into new markets, really being able to understand the dynamics there. Not just for us. Like I said, that's always part of our strategy. But anyone not just in the surveillance industry, really any industry where you're going to be, potentially capturing data. And it's easy to do that these days. You may not even realize you're capturing data and storing it, but you need to make sure that you're considering what you're taking, how long you're storing it for, why you have it, and then how often you should purge it and destroy it. So I think it goes beyond the surveillance industry. I think the ethical component is really just being transparent on why you're doing it if you are capturing that level of information.
The other thing we're doing as well from an engineering and kind of overall go-to-market perspective is that our engineering team and our sales and customer success team work very closely together in terms of our product roadmap and what we're building, and so we kind of listen to what customers need, and the product has evolved over the last few years as well to help serve those needs. So hopefully, as we continue to do that, and have more and more customer interactions, and there's great feedback coming kind of on a weekly basis, we're able to kind of take that input in and decide how we evolve certain parts of the platform, certain ways that we potentially run audits for people around loss prevention. So we're constantly listening to customers and collecting that feedback and making sure that as we release new products kind of on a monthly basis and quarterly basis, we'll be able to illuminate from what customers are saying and really help to evolve the platform. So it's not just us building what we think makes sense, but rather really listen to what customers are saying and how they're evolving. Because it really, as a vendor, the only way you can stay, really kind of competitive is to evolve the platform as customers evolve, right? You can't sit back and build your own roadmap in a box. You have to really do it with customer insight and feedback that we constantly do. So I think that's a real big competitive advantage as we listen to customers during, business reviews, things like that, to really get a sense of how they're using the platform and we evolve with them, which I think is a key competitive advantage for us.
Right. And one interesting thing, at least in our space, is that all the data is owned by our customers. So all of the images, all of the surveillance footage, all of the POS data that comes into our platform to marry up with the video from the cameras, that's all their data. So we don't technically own any of that, but however, we are what they call a data processor. So, depending on the level of infraction, if you will, a data processor could just have as much culpability as the owner of the data themselves. So, it's being a good partner with your customer to make sure that both they and you are protected against that.
Absolutely. Well, that wraps up our very first episode of iQTalk. So a huge thank you to Marc and John for joining us today and sharing their invaluable insights. Thank you to the both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We hope this discussion has sparked your interest in the dynamic world of video surveillance and opened up a conversation on the importance of ethics and technology. Stay with us on this journey at DTiQ, where we continue to bring you the latest and the most compelling narratives in the industry. This is Gabrielle signing off. Don't forget to subscribe for more episodes and join us next time on iQTalk. Thanks for watching.